at Utter Chaos Press, one of the several poetry publishers in Eugene, which I think is amazing. And it is a chapbook, and I really think, I've been thinking a lot about chapbooks versus full-length books, and I think chapbooks have a certain advantage. They do have at least one advantage over a full-length collection, and that is that I think the poems can actually be more thematically connected. They have a chance of kind of glomming together into a meta-poem, and a mega-poem is what I mean, a mega-poem. And I wonder what a meta-poem is. Well, anyway, and so that's what I hope and think has happened here, that you can just see the poem sort of hovering in a little cloud above the book. It has achieved poemhood. And it's also sort of like a village. A chapbook is like a village. All the poems know each other. So anyway, in terms of what this has turned into, what I want to read for you today, I'm going to take you out of politics and all that sort of thing and take you down the folklorish lane because after a lifetime of reading too much, I'm steeped in stories and myths and folklore, but not like a true storyteller where I can remember the plots and I can actually tell you the story. No. I just have all snippets and vague sections of folk tales in my head. But it's gotten to the point where I cannot assemble and put together a poem anymore that is not, whose parts have not been pre-soaked in myth. So I'm afraid that has become just a signature of my writing. So you will see that as I read. I'm going to start off with, and I hope you won't mind if I tell you a little bit from time to time what myth or folk tale is in the poem. And in this case, I'm going to start off with a poem that is about my house. And it has giants in it. And I think it's high time that giants, they've been getting a bad rap for so many centuries. They're the bad guys, you know, they're monsters and evil. And I think it's time for giants to be, the good giants, of which there are many, to be celebrated. So that's kind of in here. Practice fable. My house creaks at night, randomly, loudly, waking me up. And why? Unless the soil be mobile and the house stiff? And why? Unless the ground is leaving and the house trying to follow staggers? And why? Unless the earth's a giant turning in her sleep? My backside against the mattress all night, tiny earthquakes strum me. I know no story for this. And what ails you, my house? Your limbs still wholly unfurlable. The giant moves beneath you, but will not waken until what? She may greet guests at the door of her castle. You are that castle. There is no more wounded king. The house practicing in its sleep. That poem actually came about because I was lying there wondering why houses do creak. You know, they shouldn't. After years and years, they should be settled again. So here is another. This is a case of making up my own myth. I like creation myths, and this is kind of a creation myth for the color green. And I don't know where all the things come from, but green is water somewhere else. One day, water stepped out for a moment. After the hour, but before the minute. After blood, but before wine. Water went somewhere else, found permission to be away without notice there, without incurring the additional stigma of absence here. A price was paid. A price is always paid. On that day, the jungle, the meadow, the forest arrived, became By courtesy, water without need, water held in escrow. You know, in the beginning of, well, not the beginning, but way back, there was earth, air, fire, and water were considered, you know, the building blocks. And so I think that a lot of the poems in here have to do with earth, air, fire, and water. And the ones I've chosen today, somehow they all seem to have water. We'll get the fire a little bit later. So here's another one. This one, the book has a squirrel poem at the beginning, a squirrel poem at the end, a leaf poem in the beginning, a leaf poem at the end. There's a kind of a back and forth. This is one of the squirrel poems, and some of you may recognize it's the Ridgeline Trail, which I spend a lot of time on. The first bridge. One sun trumped by 2 drops of water. On this remote forest path, I see only through dripping trees, only by the mercy of the normal, the steadily drowning light, not heavy, light. As my feet hit the bridge and start a hollow clumping, below it, an unusually small squirrel starts to cross a log. He looks up, oh, exactly as I look down. We are like a duo of marionettes. Then, in that tethered way of squirrels, he swivels to pick his way amid chunks of wood, leaves, moss, and disappears, although something is caught in a net that my heart seems to have been harboring. I had closed my eyes to see if I would know without looking when the squirrel disappeared, and I would not. His proportions were perfect. His tiny feet, his tail curled over his head to steady him, his brown and gray and slight red against the yellows and greens, everything squirrel-sized down there. The stones arranged for his rummagings. In what way does he know how beautiful he is? I only have a filament sense of this, that his knowing is part of why it works. And now I'm going to go to a fire poem, and this is a poem that took place in the Oakland, California Redwood Grove. My son and I went there for a hike, and it's called "My Son Remembers the Sun," and it starts with an epigraph from Odysseus Elytis, the poet from Greece who won the Nobel Prize in the 70s. And he wrote about the sun a lot, as many Greeks do. So often when I speak about the sun, an enormous red rose entangles itself in my tongue, but I do not have the capacity to remain silent. So in the Redwood Grove, when we talked about dying, you said, I would really miss my mind. And I knew exactly what you meant. I nodded. Yeah, assembling your own mind through a lifetime is like creating a new person from scratch. You grinned. Dying seems so wasteful after all that work. You and I had talked about this, how a single day should be enough, or less, for the 2 yellow butterflies chasing each other round and round a distant fir. Maybe 1 orbit equals 1 year. Details, you continued. It's all in the details, and God is a big picture guy. Up there, you pointed and stopped. We were under a tree so tall, the sun hung just above the tip, slowly unfolding its tarp of hourly motes, spilling them onto our knees. We had abandoned the hike to sit on a slope so steep our chins were tilted 45 degrees. There came into my head then, all at once, a way to explain the essential difference between right and left and east and west. This is what I need to say to him, your brother, not you. I took a breath to speak. But you stood up, covered in almost horizontal light, leaning your head back, facing the fractured sky. If there were a God, wouldn't it have to be the sun? I turned slightly to face the nearest tree. I had just touched its airy outer bark and knew I was miles from the central core, which might be fire or not, which I must now spend another lifetime trying to reach. That's why we need so many minds, I said softly, so we can go slowly enough, handing off in relays. But you stayed silent, nailed by a single beam, before I could add, you and I have talked about this, because we hadn't yet. I'm going to read one more poem from here, and then I'll finish up with a poem, a new poem. And I'm still doing the same old thing, you know, writing folkloric works. So this one, it's kind of an ekphrastic poem, except that I can't remember the name of the painting, so I can't use it that way. But I saw in an exhibit at the Portland Art Museum, I saw a painting, and I came out, and you know how after you come out of something like that, things stick in your mind that you don't know that that will stick in your mind, and other things leak away. And I saw this painting with, down at the bottom, there was this little row of desperate-looking little animals, and I swear I bought the catalog to the show, and I couldn't find the painting anywhere. So maybe it was all in my head. It's a kind of an apocalyptic poem. Still the animals. Half buried in the murk where the paint drizzles down behind the frame, see the animals standing along the bottom of the painting, a solemn level row of paws, claws, hoofs, and shell, their colors pale, their bodies here bravely and hastily assembled. The turtle is speaking with its feet. They plead, mute as empty teacup saucers, from the bottom of the painting, where, gazing out from under the caved-in floor, the contoured highway shoulder, the collapsing city, gently these animals ride the rim of our oblivion. Gently they exceed its limits. Unable or unwilling to founder with the other more deeply buried things, they are every one still showing. I always have trouble with this poem. The animals are still showing. Their familiar proportions chime wanly in the dusk, magnified beyond whatever they might have previously said. So hang in there, animals. I'm going to read now a poem that you will recognize. It's kind of a hodgepodge of folklores clashing together, but I think you'll recognize the Hansel and Gretel story, where Hansel and Gretel's mother and father were poor, and the father took them into the woods to lose them and just abandon them. And they got wind of this ahead of time, so they brought breadcrumbs with them to scatter so they could find their way back home. And so that's one of the myths. And then there's also an angel. And the name of the poem is Ask. And in the medieval legend of Parzival, if some of you may remember, he came to a castle in the forest that materialized, and he was invited in, and then the wounded fisher king was brought out on a litter during the feast, and Parzival was supposed to ask him, "What is your suffering, sir? What is your problem, sir?" And Parzival, having been brought up to be a polite little boy, said nothing, and thus the world was doomed to have another 10 years of winter or something like that. So in some folklores, you're supposed to ask the question. In other folklores, you're not supposed to ask the question. And I don't know how the heck you're supposed to know. So here is kind of my version of that. It's called Ask. First, there is weather. There is more weather than usual. The boy and girl abandon their crumbs to chase a squirrel between the trees, open their hands, and the bread falls down as a small white snow. They do not trust their father, who dwindles into a breeze between a row of firs. They abandon the squirrel to pick chanterelles, drawn by the swirl of color in the forest dark, closely followed by numbers, even and odd, by whispers, intakes of breath, words curling under and breaking off at the ends, their glowing tips making tiny hisses in the gathering storm. They dance with their skirling shoes upon the rooted sod, believing they are lost and therefore safe. The boy and girl, wandering deep, come upon the truck of weeds, half sunk in the dreaming pond. Curled beneath its useless steering wheel, an angel dressed in blazing white. Shading their eyes, they see through the window a woman with bare feet, tiny as fawn's hooves, the blindfold around her head, the laced and perfect half moon of her folded wings. They are hungry now and do not pause to tap on the window, to wake her up, to ask for her story. Doubtless, every forest harbors certain privacies of the sun. The boy and girl find a deserted house with a blackened iron cooking stove. They open cabinets, hoping for something to eat. Outside the forest, thunderclouds gather under the warm, molten dust of a pewter heaven. As it grows darker, the boy and girl empty their pockets onto the table. Their chanterelles are the color carrots would be if they were crossed with barley, left out in unsullied air, unmolested for 100 years, then rubbed and rubbed. They cannot take the knife to them. Stop there. The power of beauty, right?